So this is day 1704, right? And see if I'm on. Okay, looks like I'm on. And it's coming, so there we go. Okay. Let's see if you can hear me. Testing. And it's coming. Okay. So seems everything is working, and I'm a little bit earlier today. I'm trying to get to 10 o'clock, y'all, to come on at 10 o'clock. That's what I'm trying to do. But, so much information is coming out about our son, Richard Halliday, the Fort Bliss whistleblower soldier hero that was reporting on the military cartel-tied criminal trafficking there on base and on Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, the doorway, the entry into the United States. That's where it is, right? El Paso, and we're very familiar with El Paso, ancient city, lots of tunnels underneath Fort Bliss and El Paso, a lot of tunnels, okay? My dad told me about them years ago. We used to jog all around Fort Bliss. I was on the swim team, the Sand Sharks. My coach was Colonel Johnson, CJ, absolutely the best coach ever. Swam in the replica. I was even confirmed there on Fort Bliss at the old replica chapel. So, camped at Cloudcroft, and just lots of memories. Girl Scouts, of course, and horseback riding, and um, just going over to Juarez. All these memories. So, we have a long history, and Rob, my husband, Richard's father, has a long history there too. 3 of his siblings were born there at William Beaumont. They weren't as lucky as I was to be born on the range, White Sands Missile Range, but they were born at right there at William Beaumont Hospital before it became a medical center. So, and his father was Air Force. So, yeah, my father-in-law was Air Force there at Biggs Airfield, and so we have a lot of experience, a lot of history there. And so anyone that says, we're not from El Paso, or we don't know what we're talking about is just not right. They're just not telling the truth. And in Richard's case, they weren't telling the truth either. And in the Walmart mass shooting mutiny case, I want to call it, starting today, I'm going to call it the Walmart mass shooting mutiny case, because it was absolutely a mutiny against the Trump administration. And it was an institutional mutiny. I mean, it's an institutional attack against their commander in chief, their chief law enforcer, right? So absolutely, it was a mutiny. You can't call it anything else, because the evidence confirms that that's what it is. And the media doesn't want to give you the right narrative. They want to mislead you. They want to put squiggly things in your eyes, that you'll be hypnotized, and be led around by their thoughts instead of your own thoughts. Um, so we're telling you the truth, and then you can decide. You can decide. And I see a lot of that with the Afrikaners now coming in. I think it's like 50-51 Afrikaners getting to come into the country, and I have friends that are Afrikaans. um, from South Africa, and I have friends that still live there from Germany. Germany met people from South Africa during those troubles that was down there. And the troubles are never what you're being told in the media. You have to um, really meet people, go there, study the history, um, and make up your own mind. And so we're not told about our history correctly. And so, it's very, very interesting. I collect old little school books, and I have some from South Africa, believe it or not, about the Boer War. And that's not with any of the tribes. South Africa has 12 official languages, y'all. 12 official languages. That tells you something, okay? That tells you absolutely. So, I mean, that gives you the bigger picture of what's going on down there. You have a very diverse um, people coming down to the Cape. And it wasn't always like that, right? The Afrikaans had that, the Cape, along with Rhodesia, with Namibia, and that's where the farming was. Rhodesia was like the breadbasket of Africa, and because of that, because that's where the food was, because that's where the water was, then you had a lot of people from all kinds coming down to that area. And so you have 12 different languages. Okay, 12 different languages. And when you have 12 different languages, and these are official languages, these are not including the unofficial languages, so that you have a really diverse group of people um, uh, with different cultures, different religions, everything. And so instead of listening to the media, and they're so racist. They are just so racist. And they just treat everyone like everyone is dumb and will just follow what they say and go, oh yeah, oh yeah. They can smear and smear and smear and not hear the stories, and not even hear the stories of these 51 Afrikaans Connors that came to the United States. So, it's uh, they're just, the media is just so evil. Yeah, I can't even, there's no words, there's no language to even describe it, how evil they are. From Bob Moore, and El Paso has absolutely experienced the false narratives and the evilness of the media. And so we've been cutting through that and reporting every day because we want accountability. In our son's case, we absolutely, they haven't given us our son's remains back. I mean, how dare they? They found his remains, but they are protecting their pocketbooks. They're protecting their criminal trafficking. If there was, a noble and honorable reason um, for being this despicable, they would tell us. But because the evidence confirms that they are covering up their illegal criminal activity uh, in connection with the Mexican cartel, which have strings to the CCP, that means that we have individuals in our institution that are absolutely treasonous, that are traitors to their oath, all the taxpayers that pay their wages to the country. to every individual that they are responsible for. And I'm talking about the generals. I'm talking about the DA's office, and we just finished posting a things that we have known about with Bill Hicks and Luis Rene Diaz, Arturo Alba, and the connection with the chief of police, Chavera, and more connections that, and I'm telling you, I've told, we've been right all along, because, not because we feel like it, not because we want it to be, not because it's a false narrative, but because evidence that we have collected, think about it, 20,000 plus hours we have been um, doing this day in and day out, collecting evidence in all kinds of ways, through research, through talking to people, through FOIAs, through media, um, articles that we have pieced together to show that what is not true, okay? Because, for example, this Lionel Gutierrez, this El Paso Police Department officer, that was off duty, quote unquote. I'm sorry, you're on the border, you're El Paso Police Department, you're not carrying your weapon, or are you carrying your weapon? You're coming to an active shooter area, you see uh, Grant, Ernest Christopher Grant, which I don't buy his story at all. I'm not saying that he didn't get shot, but I'm not buying his story at all. Because of the video, and because of the El Paso Police Department having to come out and backpedal. And then you have the story of Lionel Gutierrez that is just absolutely absurd, absurd, absurd. There's no other way to tell people that these people can't even, someone's nose is growing really long. Okay. That's all you can say. Someone's nose is growing really long. I think a lot of people's noses are growing very, very long because you know, these stories are so absurd, and they're stolen valor. They're acting like they're heroes. And of course, Ernest Christopher Grant wasn't a hero. Of course, whatever Gutierrez did that day, it doesn't make sense. It absolutely doesn't make sense. And it proves that there's multiple shooters, right? It proves that there's multiple shooters. So we have looked at his story very, very carefully, and looked at all of the evidence, and it is absolutely absurd. And someone's nose is growing very, very long. Um, and the whole Walmart mass shooting, a mutiny, that's where the evidence is confirmed, is that this was absolutely a diversion, and a mutiny against um, President Trump's administration. And it was a bloody one, a bloody one. And you saw it there in the video. You saw the German national, which, they really don't talk about that too much, right? They want the narrative to be a racist narrative instead of being a human narrative, the human loss, no matter where you come from. But being German is, makes it even more international. So you have the loss of this German national, you have the loss of Mexican nationals, and then you have the loss of Americans, and then uh, who's uh, all those lives are lives to fight for, right? So it is really a media, you can say that it's a media orchestrated narrative um, that is cartel-tied, and you can see it in the DA's office. It's very clear in the DA's office, and I've talked about the the El Paso Criminal Law Magistrate Court. I've talked about the um, medical examiner. We've talked about the Mayela Crucius connection in the federal courthouse with Judge David Guadarrama, in the FBI, and also at the Walmart cybersecurity. The Mayela Crucius, I mean, it's just, it's just, I could talk every day all about that all the time. But we want to also go into the DA's office because the Mayelas were in the DA's office with James Montoya, James 2028 stamp Montoya, and of course under DA Esparza, Jaime Esparza. But after that, you had a duly elected district attorney, Yvonne Rosales. She was an upset candidate that won. She was, they didn't expect her to win, but yet the people spoke and they wanted her to be the district attorney for the 34th Judicial District. And she won. She won. She's a duly elected district attorney right now under the Texas Constitution. She is still the district attorney of the 34th Judicial District as the holdover district attorney. Now, she's not putting on her boots. She's not taking her rightful place. She's not honoring her oath because you had, this attack on her that was, unbelievable. And Bill Hicks um, even admitted to spying on her administration and to get information and to work and collude and conspire to get her out of there, right? And so when she resigned with duress and her signature doesn't match the signature that's on her resignation, just saying it doesn't match, something's going on. Um, Bill Hicks was appointed by Governor Greg Abbott. And, you would think that Veronica Escobar would come to the rescue of Yvonne Rosales because Veronica Escobar was, sitting on the commission for Hispanic women. And Yvonne Rosales was the first Hispanic female district attorney. And you would think that Veronica Escobar would rally around her, but she didn't. She didn't because she's dirty and she's cartel tied. Okay. Veronica Escobar is cartel tied. And you had a district attorney that still is. Um, that wanted to take the Walmart mass shooting case to trial, wanted to show everyone the evidence, was looking into and investigating the Walmart mass shooting victims fund that exceeded $12 million and that there was fraud there. We have confirmed, we have the evidence that there was absolutely fraud going on in the distribution of the Walmart victims funds. So, and Yvonne Rosales was looking in that too, and she was also investigating Richard's case, and that has been confirmed. And then when she uh, really, when well, I'll just say when Bill Hicks was appointed in a recess appointment. So it's like a gift, right? It's like a total gift. You don't have to go through any kind of scrutiny with a recess appointment by the governor of Texas. And they did that on purpose because he had so much dirty laundry, right? He had so much dirty laundry. He was in some breach of contract problems. He had state bar complaints. He didn't pay his taxes for multiple years. Um, he was in let's just say he wasn't the cream of the crop, y'all. He was the bottom of the barrel. Bill Hicks was the bottom of the barrel, and for some really devious. I think it's devious. Because don't tell me that the governor of Texas can't do a background check. Um, chose and appointed Bill Hicks to be the district attorney of the 34th Judicial District, right there in El Paso, the doorway to the United States, with all of the criminal trafficking that was known going on. And we know it was going on because you had Luis Rene Diaz, right? You have his family, his parents getting into trouble, and then he was arrested and indicted for his extortion, his conspiracy to extortion, his fraud, his uh, forging or falsifying vouchers, and he was doing that with Arturo Alba, okay, who was the anchor, a media anchor there in Mexico, but they had homes and connections and bank accounts and everything in El Paso, okay. But wasn't a good thing for Arturo Alba. Um, and maybe he had a conscience. Maybe he wanted to be a whistleblower. We don't know because his life was taken from him, cartel style. Cartel style. Thank you, Anistia, for coming on. And the point with that is that Bill Hicks hired Louis Rene Diaz. I'll just call him Rene Diaz, uh, to be his chief of staff, without a background check. Okay. Um, he waived that background check. And we these concerning uh, connections are absolutely connected to Richard, and proves that the cartel is part of Richard's case and part of the Walmart mass shooting case. And when we brought all this to the attention of Bill Hicks, um, he, shut down everything, um, to protect Luis Rene Diaz, his connection with Luis Rene Diaz and in that office. And what do I mean by everything? He stopped the investigation into the fraud of the Walmart victims funds. He stopped the investigation of Richard's case. He had to halt all of that, because he had to protect any kind of scrutiny or anything on Luis Rene Diaz, because it led to Moya, Willie Moya. Willie Moya, and was a prominent cartel figure for money laundering. So the plot gets thicker and thicker and thicker, because you have this military, um, Kyla Cardona, uh, saying that Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe ordered the obstruction of Richard's and interference of Richard's investigation because he didn't want to have another Vanessa Guillen situation. Um, but you also have the DA's office protecting their cartel ties to money laundering and the criminal trafficking and everything, all their associations with all of that. And don't forget that Bill Hicks had a conflict of interest with the Walmart case itself, and yet Governor Abbott still appointed him, knowing that he would be in charge of prosecuting really one of the biggest cases in U.S. history as far as a active shooter mass shooting case. And, so, he was really the bottom of the barrel and the wrong choice. And he had brought in the cartel, Bill Hicks, Bill the usurper. I call him the usurper. Usurper Hicks brought in the cartel into the prosecutor's office, giving him access to intelligence, these investigations, the cases, the justice system in El Paso, so that the cartel then was in there. And so when you add this to um, the Mayela Crucius situation in the federal court, and then you add that to the Penny Hamilton. And remember, Penny Hamilton went and worked for Bill Hicks after she did her damage in the El Paso Criminal Law Magistrate Court. And then you take into consideration Veronica Escobar not having Yvonne Rosales' back, but protecting the cartel, like Mario Raskin Ortiz as the very well paid, illegally paid, because he's not qualified, medical examiner, chief medical examiner, that handled the remains of all of the victims. And so, when you see this kind of dynamics, it tells you that there is a criminal syndicate going on. There is a grip of the justice system in El Paso, and the reason why they do that, and you see this with James Montoya, James 2028 stamp Montoya, um, just making a plea deal, right, when he campaigned on the death penalty. Um, and, it's just absolutely obvious that they are protecting not the American people, being those that live in El Paso County, and beyond that, right? Not being good stewards of the money. Look, they uh, by our account, it's, I would say, over $10 million, but the article that came out, it's probably even more than that when you take in consideration the federal case. But the money spent on the Walmart mass shooting was, an article came out and they were saying that it's over $6 million. And people are furious about that. Um, and so please post on that article. I need to post it up. But please post and say, really, uh, and there should not have been more than like $20,000, 25,000, maybe $30,000 spent on Patrick Crucius for defense. And here they are spending millions and millions of taxpayers' money on this false narrative. And what was it for? It was to protect the criminal trafficking network that is tied to the military, unfortunately, and to the cartels. And now you see with Marco's list, he's. And did I post the Marco's list yet? I posted maybe one or two people. I need to post the whole list. The Marcos list, 44 individuals of narco politicians in Mexico and Mexican generals. Um, so, eh, are you telling me there's only Mexican narco politicians and Mexican narco generals? I don't think so. The uh, the evidence confirms that it has crossed the border and that we're giving it to you right now, how bad it is in El Paso also. So that list gets extended to the American side, of course. Richard's list, right? You get the Marco list from Mexico, but you'll get Richard's list from the United States side, that allowed 10,000 children at a time to be trafficked, hundreds of thousands of them to be trafficked. Um, and it really started turbo trafficking in March of 2021. March of 2021. And, the retaliation against us really started in January of 2023 when Bill Hicks usurped that position. And why do I say usurped? Because he didn't install properly according to the Texas Constitution, and it's an easy installation. I mean, my goodness, he got that job handed to him, and he's the bottom of the barrel. And, he doesn't have any sense to look in the mirror and, say, oh my gosh, I'm the bottom of the barrel and I got this job just handed to me without any scrutiny. Um, and try to do a good job. No, he usurped. He didn't sign his anti-bribe promise. And then when uh, we found out much quicker with Montoya, but with Bill Hicks, it took a while. When we found out that he didn't install properly, that he was a usurper, that he did not have legal authority. You just can't come off the street and just say, I'm the DA, right? You can't just have the governor say, okay, you're the DA without following the Texas Constitution and signing your anti-bribe promissory statement of officer, filing that, and then taking the oath of office and filing that. That's the way you do it, right? That's the way you're supposed to do it. There is checks and balances in our government, and that's a checks and balance. It's a beautiful thing in Texas to have that checks and balance. And these cartel-tied who can't make that promise, can't make that anti-bribe promise to the people, know that, they are better off risking not signing it at all than to sign it and lie and break that promise. Okay. So that's why and you cannot sign it after the oath. Okay. Because if it's signed after the oath, it's null and void. Okay. Legally, it's null and void. And that's why they try to do it that way. And that's why they try to tamper with the dates and everything. So Bill Hicks is a usurper, and absolutely Montoya, he's a 2028 stamp. He's also not the legitimate DA, and yet they're impersonating, right? They're impersonating, they're usurping that office, all that money, all that power, all that access, and then giving it to giving it to manage a cartel member, a cartel associate, um, to manage that office, that very, very powerful office. And so they are absolutely involved in um, the murder case of our son. And and the ties, go all over, all over. It just gets really, the plot thickens or the ties thicken up. And it's kind of like a web, and the closer you get to the center, the more it gets all knotted. And it is absolutely something that the people of El Paso need to know, because this then implicates, I believe, the evidence confirms it, that Governor Greg Abbott is implicated. So you have not only Veronica Escobar now, you not you have Bill Hicks, and you have the Mayela Crucius, and you have Ortiz, then you have the judges that sit on the uh, El Paso Criminal Law Magistrate Court. Um, Absolutely, Jaime Esparza and James Montoya. You have that, but you also have the governor of the great state of Texas being up to no good, being up to no good. And he has close ties uh, to El Paso. Of course, El Paso is, the front door to the United States, but he's absolutely up to no good. And um, now, you'll see more and more of that coming out because we're, 4 months um, into President Trump's um, administration. And, a lot of this information is being released to the American people so that they can have, uh, you know, um, alternative information than what the media is giving you, the mainstream media is giving you. And you're going to have to look at all of it and compare it. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do that, but it needs to be done. It has to be done because our country's security is at stake. The future of our country is at stake. And so when you see, and you have to admit, everyone has to admit if they're a Trumper or not, how President Trump is working every day to secure an economy, to secure energy, to secure allies, to keep peace, um, and to bring in investments into the United States, but also to release the Marco list, to designate the Mexican cartels as a big T organization so that they can do an investigation through the State Department. That was just so brilliant. Do an investigation through the State Department, not the judicial, not the FBI, which are now very infiltrated, but through the State Department to look at the fraud with the visas, look at the fraud using those visas and fraudulent documents to open up bank accounts, to freeze those bank accounts, to uh, to take away the visa rights of these narco politicians, um, and to arrest them at the border, for this I mean, billions of dollars of fraud in contracts and and fraud and con jobbing and really being unqualified and taking our positions. Yeah, and working for foreign and domestic enemies in those positions. That's causing a lot of people. Think about, I think it's like seven, just in one little section of this case, like 7 people have been killed. The amount of death that this is such a dirty business when you allow cartel criminal activities to prosper, and to grow. It is just such a deadly business. And so we're doing whatever we can to notify the people, and it's really up to El Pasoans, up to Americans, to look at the evidence and decide if they just want to tolerate being you know really $6 million for a plea deal, y'all, for someone, and not even a competency evaluation for mental health, where Patrick Crucius has a long documented history of severe mental health conditions. and it is required by Texas law to have a independent evaluation for competency by an independent judge, and $6 million didn't pay for that. Didn't pay for that. Bill Hicks didn't order that. Um, so things that are very, very obvious. Those are the things that we're trying to show that are very, very obvious to the American people. Um, the level that these infiltrators will go to protect the cartel and the narco politicians. So that is really, and I've mentioned every time, Leilani Hart needs to be arrested ASAP, right? I believe um, evidence confirms that the Mayellas need to be arrested. Absolutely. Um, and, we need to get to the bottom of what happened with the Walmart mass shooting. Uh, a mutiny, right? So, you know, you can't have a mutiny, right? A mutiny is so bad, y'all. It is so bad because the trust goes way down, way, way down. And if you don't have trust in a country and in your government, you're not going to have a country, right? You're just going to have all these band of robbers doing their dirty deeds. So, and yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your prayers and your love. And we are absolutely getting to the bottom of this. Just looking at the whole timeline of Ernest Christopher Grant and Donna Sifford and Lionel Gutierrez and watching the video of the Walmart um, right after, with uh, the German national Alexander Gerhard Hofmann-Roth body still laying there. I mean, that's how close that. I mean, the baby was taken out, right? You saw it, and um, so it was right very early on in this whole case. Um, and you just didn't hear any more gunshots. You didn't see a lot of wounded, right? You didn't see a lot of screaming people of wounded, right? Um, it's, the narrative, we need to have the truth. And that's why people want the JFK files, because they want the truth. Most people that really wanted the truth, that were alive at the time and they saw what America was going through, um, they're no longer with us. And so that's why all this delay. But people want the truth. And that's the only thing that we've ever asked for with this whole thing. I remember at the very, very beginning, we said, let's just hear the truth. Um, we're absolutely willing to have the truth, but the truth is very damaging to them, And Richard was sparkling clean, a hero. And so that's why we have to fight for the truth to come out. So thank you so much. God bless you. And we'll be posting the Richards list to go along with the Marco list. And if you have any questions about the DA's office with Bill Hicks and Governor Abbott, feel free